Alright everyone, welcome back to Crypto Brain. Today's update has created a dangerous level of excitement across the crypto industry because for the very first time, it genuinely feels as though the United States government is moving dangerously close towards making a final decision on the future of crypto regulation in America. And perhaps the most shocking development of all is that Ripple, Coinbase, Binance, and more than 200 crypto organizations have now officially sent a direct message to the United States Senate, warning lawmakers that if regulatory clarity continues to be delayed, America could risk losing its leadership position in the blockchain revolution altogether. And ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly where the situation begins transforming from ordinary politics into a multi-trillion-dollar financial battle, because behind closed doors, intense negotiations are reportedly continuing between the White House, lawmakers, major banks, and crypto giants. According to insiders, the next few weeks could determine whether the crypto market enters its next explosive growth phase, or whether the entire industry remains trapped inside another cycle of uncertainty. But perhaps the most important detail here is that institutions already appear to be positioning quietly, while the majority of the public still does not fully understand what may be developing behind the scenes. And that is exactly why today's discussion is so important, because we are going to break down the Senate's latest signals, the hidden implications of the Clarity Act, the fears coming from major banks, the future of XRP and tokenization, and the reason why smart money appears to be viewing crypto regulation as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Now, the biggest question is this: why has the entire crypto industry suddenly become so aggressive, and why is pressure building so heavily around the Senate? Because honestly, when you analyze the situation properly, this is no longer simply a crypto bill. It is rapidly becoming an issue tied directly to America's future financial dominance. According to reports, lawmakers and the White House are still continuing negotiations behind closed doors, attempting to merge ethics provisions, DeFi rules, and competing versions of the legislation from both the Banking Committee and the Agricultural Committee into one final unified Clarity Act capable of reaching the Senate floor. Senator Cynthia Lummis has openly signaled that lawmakers still intend to move the bill forward, although she admitted the timeline may extend slightly beyond expectations, because securing the necessary votes on the Senate floor will not be easy. And this is where market psychology becomes incredibly important, because investors understand that the longer the delay continues, the greater the uncertainty becomes. And uncertainty has always been one of the biggest enemies of financial markets. However, the situation became even more serious once the crypto industry officially presented a united front. Ripple, Coinbase, Binance, Hedera, Solana, Uniswap, and more than 200 organizations collectively sent a direct letter to Senate leadership demanding that the Clarity Act be scheduled immediately for Senate debate and final voting. And ladies and gentlemen, this is an enormous signal because under normal circumstances, the crypto industry is highly fragmented. Every company usually fights for its own ecosystem, its own market share, and its own interests. But when this many competitors suddenly begin pushing in exactly the same direction, it strongly suggests that the industry genuinely believes America is approaching either a major breakthrough or a major strategic failure in the global blockchain race. Now, perhaps the most fascinating conflict emerging here is the growing tension between traditional banks and the crypto industry itself. Reports suggest that major banking groups are aggressively pushing back against stablecoin yield provisions because they fear stablecoins could eventually begin absorbing traditional bank deposits. If consumers increasingly move their capital into stablecoin ecosystems, banks worry their traditional business models could face serious long-term pressure. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has reportedly raised concerns regarding the current direction of the legislation as well. However, supporters of the Clarity Act continue arguing that these fears are heavily exaggerated and that banks themselves could ultimately benefit from integrating blockchain infrastructure and digital asset services directly into their existing systems. Former Senator Pat Toomey reportedly attempted to reassure lawmakers by explaining that stablecoins and traditional banking systems can coexist without damaging financial stability. Senator Cynthia Lummis echoed a very similar argument, pointing out that bank deposits have actually continued growing despite the rise of stablecoins rather than collapsing because of them. And this represents a major narrative shift taking place inside Washington right now, because only a few years ago lawmakers largely viewed crypto as a threat to financial stability. Today, however, the discussion has evolved into determining how crypto can be integrated responsibly into the regulated financial system. At the same time, another major narrative is rapidly gaining momentum across the market. Matt Hoogan recently explained that the winning crypto assets of the next cycle may look very different from those that dominated previous market cycles. According to him, the next phase of crypto adoption is likely to be driven by tokenization, stablecoins, and compliant blockchain infrastructure. And this is exactly where projects such as XRP, XLM, HBAR, and Chainlink suddenly enter the spotlight, because institutions may eventually prioritize blockchain ecosystems capable of delivering compliance, liquidity, interoperability, and institutional-grade infrastructure. Now just take a moment to imagine the broader implications of this. If the Clarity Act successfully passes and the United States finally establishes a clear regulatory framework for crypto markets, institutions could finally receive the legal certainty they have been waiting for over the past several years. Suddenly, trillions of dollars worth of traditional finance capital could begin flowing into blockchain systems, because banks, hedge funds, asset managers, and fintech firms would likely feel far more comfortable innovating aggressively once the rules are properly defined. And that is exactly why many investors are viewing this legislation not merely as another political event, but potentially as one of the most important turning points in crypto history. But there is also another dangerous reality developing beneath the surface. Industry leaders continue warning that if America fails to deliver regulatory clarity soon, innovation could begin shifting aggressively towards other regions of the world. Several countries across Asia and Europe have already made significant progress regarding digital asset regulation, allowing banks and fintech companies within those jurisdictions to move beyond experimentation and into real production environments. In other words, the rest of the world is not waiting. And if the United States moves too slowly, capital, talent, and blockchain innovation could gradually migrate overseas. And honestly, this is precisely why emotions across the market have become so intense, because investors increasingly feel that the crypto industry may be standing directly in front of a historic turning point. If the Clarity Act passes successfully, the next wave of institutional adoption could begin immediately. Tokenization could accelerate rapidly. Stablecoins could become deeply integrated into mainstream finance, and compliant blockchain ecosystems could experience enormous increases in long-term value. But if lawmakers fail to deliver clarity, uncertainty could once again dominate market sentiment and temporarily slow the momentum of the entire industry. So ultimately, the situation now appears to be moving towards its final stages. The Senate is under pressure. White House negotiations are continuing. Crypto companies are presenting a united front. Banks are aggressively raising concerns, and the entire industry is now waiting for one thing above all else: regulatory clarity. Because history has repeatedly shown that whenever regulation, innovation, and institutional money begin aligning in the same direction, markets can transform completely. And perhaps that is exactly why smart money appears to be positioning quietly while the general public is still attempting to understand the full picture. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more professional updates on XRP, crypto regulation, institutional adoption, and the future of blockchain finance, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay connected, because the next few weeks could genuinely reshape the future of the digital asset industry. I truly appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next one.